Before I dropped out of my PhD, I was studying the attention economy, basically how and why every app and device you own is designed from the ground up to be as addictive as possible, to consume as much of your time and attention as it possibly can. It's why my phone looks like this. It's why my browser looks like this. Reddit, main feed blocked. YouTube, a search engine for educational content. Amazon, no ads. Instagram? Just kidding, I don't use Instagram. Just call your friends, man. Today, I'm going to talk about the attention economy for the first time on this channel. We're going to talk about how it works, how you can and can't combat it, and how I think self-hosting and the homelab might be one of the only ways to escape the attention economy in 2025. So let's talk about it. One of the things that bugs me most about the attention economy is we refuse to use the word addiction. We call it smartphone overuse, social media overuse. These are the terms used in the literature, and we're even discouraged from calling it addiction. But here's a reasonable definition provided by psychologists and cited in Digital Minimalism by Cal Newport. Addiction is a condition in which a person engages in use of a substance or in a behavior for which the rewarding effects provide a compelling incentive to repeatedly pursue the behavior despite detrimental consequences. Not to mention, in 2013, the DSM-5 included for the first time behavioral addictions as diagnosable. That means we have precedence. We can talk about this like it really is. Now, you may be wondering to yourself, but is it really detrimental? Is my smartphone and social media overuse detrimental to me enough to the point where we can talk about it like it's an addiction? Yes. Yes, it is. Let me show you a talk I gave just this summer. I'm not going to go over this whole talk because it was like 45 minutes. I'm not jamming that all into a YouTube video. But we are going to address the essentials. Now, first off, we assess smartphone overuse in really interesting ways. We ask questions like, how soon after waking do you check your phone? How many times do you unlock per day? And does not checking your phone for an hour or more make you feel anxiety or restlessness? It turns out these are the same kinds of questions we use to assess if somebody has a nicotine addiction. That's kind of interesting, no? Now, you may be saying to yourself, well, maybe it's like a harmless addiction, kind of like caffeine, not that big a deal. No, doom scrolling and the connection to mental health is really strong. We've seen tons of psychologically validated studies that demonstrate higher rates of anxiety, stress, and depression. And man, if you're in Gen Z like me and you've been raised on the smartphone, you're probably feeling that stress and anxiety too. It's even neurological. We see sleep disruption via amygdala hyperactivation and cortisol dysregulation. This is biological. We see lower well-being and life satisfaction, and we see in huge studies of n equals 100. So we're not talking about small studies with 20 people talking about their feelings. We're talking about hundreds of data points linking smartphone overuse to existential anxiety, mistrust, and PTSD-like symptoms through vicarious trauma. Maybe it's not a good idea. It's not good for you to wake up and the first thing you see is a list of the world's greatest atrocities today. Maybe that's bad for you. Maybe that might cause vicarious trauma. Can you really tell me that this behavior doesn't meet the criteria for repeatedly pursuing the behavior despite detrimental consequences? Doesn't seem likely, does it? Now you may be wondering to yourself, well, why do we have to call it addiction? This is a serious problem and we can address it as such. I think we need to call it an addiction because then we get the gravity of the law under us. If it's causing minor behavioral problems for people or potentially mental health outcomes that are not so good, the law doesn't get involved. People don't start paying attention. There are serious impacts to our mental health and well-being caused by smartphone addiction and social media addiction. The attention economy is very bad for us, and we need the gravity of that word, addiction, to be able to enforce real legal and legislative change about what kinds of things are allowed to be put into applications and put in front of children. Now, if you're really keen, you might hit me with something like, correlation is not causation, Nathan. Okay, but here's something really compelling. It goes the other way too. When we look at studies that try to reduce smartphone overuse, and they work, we can see that people reduce their smartphone use, those people end up with better mental health and well-being outcomes. So this is bidirectional, which is usually a good sign that something is causation, not just correlation. You may not be able to to say 100%, but that's the same argument that the tobacco people gave back in the 90s when they were trying to claim that cigarettes didn't cause cancer. It's like, well, it's only really highly correlated. So what? So what? Even if you don't care about the word addiction, even if you don't care about those mental well-being outcomes, I want to present an idea to you. This is the attention economy. It's about your attention. And when you love something, what you do for it is you pay attention. When you love a movie or music, you pay attention to it. When you love a person, you listen to them and hear their thoughts. You don't check your phone real quick and tune them out. You pay attention. When you love a hobby like playing guitar or something like that, you become engrossed in that hobby, in that moment, and you pay attention to it. Attention is the foundation of love. And when you are robbed of your ability to pay attention to something, you are robbed of your ability to love something. More than that, this is about time. Here's a fun fact. You're gonna die. Your time is finite. This is not a resource. It's not money. You don't go and get more and just work a couple more hours and then you can pay more time to something. It's like, no, dude, you just die. You run out of life. And so when you are robbed of your time, you never get it back. The attention economy isn't taking something as mundane as money. It's your life and ability to love things. That's way more important than your money. And I want to be clear. You're not being robbed of your attention and your ability to love and your time by accident. This is intentional. And not because they care about you and hurting your feelings and taking up your life, just because it's profitable. Let me show you how I know, how we know collectively the science of this is intentional. It comes down to basic psychology, the same psychology that was used in Vegas to make gambling addictive. Here's the deal. Once upon a time, slot machines sucked. They made no money, they weren't enticing, but today, they're 80% of Las Vegas profits. How? Vegas mastered the art of the variable reward rate. So when you pair a couple of things together, you can create addictive behaviors, or you can foster an addiction. So first off, you need a stimulating cue. In this case, with new slot machines, they have flashing, colorful lights and sound. Basically something to grab your attention. The next thing they do is provide you a really juicy reward. Money. Everybody likes money. Now, last thing is they use a variable reward rate. Your brain loves it. When the reward doesn't come every time for a behavior, it comes only some of the time, variably. When you pair all three of these things together, a huge flashing stimulating cue like colorful lights and sound, a juicy reward like money, and then you only give it sometimes, you can create a behavior, a really strongly, deeply rooted behavior. And your phone does the exact same thing to you. It's a slot machine in your pocket. Let me show you exactly how. Step one is you're cued. You're given some sort of stimulus. Those are notifications. There's a reason that notifications are red bubbles, not blue bubbles. Facebook actually intentionally made the switch. Red bubbles grab your attention more than blue does. It gives you a sense of urgency. And then you are rewarded when you pull down, just like pulling the lever on your slot machine, you sometimes get interesting articles or somebody liked your post. But most importantly, sometimes you don't. Sometimes there isn't a new interesting article. Sometimes nobody interacted with you. That's a variable reward rate in your pocket, reinforcing the behavior of pulling your phone out of your pocket and taking a quick look. I wish that was the end of it. Just a slot machine in your pocket, not so bad. But it's not. There is an entire classification of UI UX patterns designed to make you spend more time in apps. We call them attention capture damaging patterns. My bad on the typo here. So things like infinite scroll. Just keeps loading content, so your default behavior is just to keep going. There's nothing to cue you to stop. The pull to refresh is your slot machine lever. Autoplay makes the default behavior continue going. Time fog is another pattern. Any way to make it difficult for you to tell how much time has passed really helps you from cueing yourself to stop. The same thing happens in Vegas, by the way. There are no clocks on the wall in Vegas because they don't want you to know how long you've spent there. Another really sinister one is nagging notifications. They will find any reason to send you a notification because that's the cue. That's your stimulus to get back into the system. Even worse, they will send you fake notifications. Twitter is really big on this one. They'll just send you notifications that somebody sent you a message, but nobody sent you a message. They're just trying to get you back into their system. These are not innocent design quirks. These are built-in, known mechanisms to foster addictive behavior. So you are being taken advantage of on purpose. And again, I want to remind you, this isn't personal. They don't care about you and ruining your life. It's just profitable to do so. Your mental health is a side effect. But luckily, we have a catalog of these attention capture damaging patterns. We can just strip some of them out, right? That's the browser stuff I was showing you at the beginning of this video. So let's talk about that. The browser is the easiest place to start fighting back because in your browser, you still have control over what's fed to you. At the end of the day, your browser just feeds you HTML, JavaScript, and CSS. And so Chrome extensions or extensions on Firefox or whatever you're using can just remove stuff. That's how my Reddit doesn't have a feed. That's how my YouTube doesn't have a feed. Chrome extensions. So let me show you a couple of ones I find really useful. Here are 4 of my favorites. The first is Uninternet. Uninternet affects a couple of applications, YouTube, Instagram, and Amazon. And it's basically what makes YouTube and Amazon into these nothing but a search engine for products or videos. The impact here is you don't get the infinite scrolling feed of stuff. I don't get my subscriptions or homepage or shorts. None of it. It's just YouTube. Now, YouTube does have useful content on here. I hope that I create some of it. And a lot of people do. I don't want to not have any YouTube whatsoever. What I want is not an algorithm feeding me stuff that it thinks will make me spend more time. I want YouTube to be a resource. And Uninternet helps me do that. Same thing with Amazon. Sometimes you gotta buy stuff and Amazon's the only place to find it. But I don't wanna be fed a list of products so long that when I look at it, I forget what I was there to buy in the first place. This just presents me a search bar so I can find things that I need to buy. I don't use Instagram, but blocking the feed lets you participate in group messages and things like that if your friend group communicates over Instagram a lot. There is Uninternet. If you use Reddit, especially as a technical person, as a homelabber, there are a lot of times Reddit is like a great resource for figuring out bugs or best settings and features and best practices for whatever you're building. I used it last night to configure Jellyfin. Lots of people talk about that. But Reddit is also a phenomenal source of distractions. Getting rid of that infinite feed, the infinite scroll, and notifications makes it a little bit easier to deal with, a little bit less addictive. We're stripping out attention capture damaging patterns. Unhook is another fantastic one that makes YouTube a little bit easier to deal with. Now, Uninternet does a lot of this by default, but Unhook gives you a little bit more granular control. So you can just hide shorts, for example, if that's really your vice. Or you can hide Explore and Trending, but keep your subscriptions if you're really a big fan of the channels that you're subscribed to. Unhook is a fantastic way to get granular control over the addictive components of YouTube. Strip those out, but keep the things you care about. And lastly, Undistracted is kind of a nuke all option. So Undistracted lets you block Facebook, YouTube, Twitter, Reddit, Netflix, LinkedIn, Instagram, and Pinterest. Lots of different tools. I've got a bunch of these blocked as well, but in settings, you can have more granular control over when. So for example, I make YouTube videos. I kind of need access to YouTube, but I want the default to be non-access. And so I can pause blocking on a specific schedule, which is fantastic for me. Not only that, I can lock these settings. And now I need a password to get access to these settings, to change this back. But I don't remember that password. That password is stored in Bitwarden. So there's additional friction for me to go unlock those settings and gain access to YouTube and things like that. Because this is a really strongly, deeply rooted behavior for me. I have trouble stopping myself from going onto YouTube, and the additional friction makes it a lot harder to just get that stimulus or cue and feel like going on YouTube. But let's be honest with ourselves. 80% of the problem is not in your browser. Most of your consumption happens here, on this guy, or your Apple TV or Smart TV OS thingamabob. It's where you consume apps. Now, one of the great powers of your browser is it is just HTML, CSS, and JavaScript at the end of the day. You can strip out attention capture damaging patterns. We know what they are, and we have control over that environment. But these things, they're locked down. You can't strip out any features of an app. That's closed source nonsense. And so finally, we return to the point of this channel, which has been like home labbing and Linuxy stuff. I've come to the conclusion that in these locked down environments, your phone, your smart TV, and the apps you use with them, sometimes the only solution for regaining control over your attention is a form of abstinence. An abstinence from the attention economy apps. But straight up abstinence from all of modernity is not really a practical solution, right? YouTube really is a really useful tool for learning new things. I mean, university professors put entire courses, entire lectures on YouTube. I put my stuff on YouTube because I hope that it's helpful to people. Same thing with being able to call somebody from your mobile phone. Pretty sweet. I mean, if you're in trouble, it's really nice to be able to contact somebody, or using Apple Maps or Google Maps or whatever is really convenient. And even for the things that aren't strictly necessary. I like watching films and movies with my friends and things like that. I don't want to cut that out just because I'm getting rid of Netflix. I would like my leisure time and consuming art in a reasonable fashion. The importance is control. Control over how I do it, when I do it. Control over my data and where it goes and doesn't go, and how I'm fed new information. I don't want to be fed. I don't want to feed. I'm not a pig at a trough. I want to engage with art and call my mom. This isn't insane. And so I think self-hosting alternatives to a lot of these closed source tools where we can't strip out attention capture damaging patterns is a viable solution that doesn't require straight up abstinence from everything modernity has to offer. Of course, replacing all this stuff is a ton of work. I mean, even Windows is feeding you ads in the start menu these days and in the install process. Your phone is a closed source thing, whether on iOS or Android. Netflix or whatever multitude of streaming services you use. Your consumer/ISP router is another point of access. There are a ton of things. Also, a lot of us are using LLMs these days. We're using smart assistants like Siri or Google. There's a lot of stuff to replace. And that is going to be kind of the focus of this channel moving forward. I'm going to be looking at a roadmap and building out that roadmap for how you can sort of free yourself from these applications and host them yourself. This channel has been about Linux and homelabbing and things like that so far, and it will continue to be, but it's now also going to be focused on homelabbing with a purpose. Homelabbing with the purpose of freeing up your attention from the attention economy. What kinds of applications and tools can we use to do that? To engage with art and learning materials online or in your own lab more meaningfully than just consuming content. So let's move on to a couple of the things I think we're going to be building out, and then we'll wrap up the video. Netflix and the streaming services are one of the big things that hits you. And so I'm looking at Jellyfin. Jellyfin is just a piece of software, free open source software that lets you put your movies and your TV shows and music on a server. Everything that you own, legally acquired, on your own server that you manage. And this means that there's no Netflix algorithm feeding you the next best movie that you might like. It's just stuff that you care about because you bought it. Like this. I actually built out my Jellyfin server on stream last night. You can take a look at that stream and see how it goes. I'll be making YouTube videos on this stuff as well. Apple TV or Google TV or whatever thing you've got going on is another nightmare of ads and algorithmic feeds. And so I'll be looking at Kodi as a replacement for that. You can build it into one of those little N100 mini PCs or a Raspberry Pi, and that turns your TV into a smart TV, but without ads and algorithms and nonsense. Also, Windows is full of ads. Apple less so, but it still kind of pokes you a lot. So I think Linux is a very reasonable alternative because it gives you control. There's no ads built into Linux unless you're using Ubuntu, thanks Canonical. And so I'll be continuing to talk about Linux. I'll also be looking at the phones. Smartphones. I'll be looking at dumbifying your phone in all sorts of different ways, whether that's taking a look at the light phone, or Graphene OS, or just taking this guy and dumbifying him down by removing features. I've taken my iPhone 12 mini and made it pretty dumb. There's no Safari, there's no App Store, it's just messages, the phone, Maps, and Uber. You know, because I hate the DTC. What are you gonna do? We'll also be looking at things like OpenSense, because I think the router being your point of access to the internet is an important thing to look at. I don't have a very great understanding of how all that works yet, but I'd like to. And so we'll be looking at managing your own router. So there you have it. We talked about how the attention economy works, why it exists, and it's so profitable. We've talked about the psychological mechanisms used to keep you hooked, and we've talked about how to combat it. And then we brought it all the way back to the homelab, baby. We made it about Linux. We found a way. I want to wrap this up with a call to action. I think you should read Digital Minimalism by Cal Newport. I read this for the first time in 2022 when during COVID, my screen time shot up from like 2 hours a day to 6. When you have nothing to do, it's really easy to spend your time on your phone. And this book basically handles the behavioral side of things. I'm going to be talking a lot about tech, but it takes a lot of work to relearn how to spend your time. And this book helps you figure that out. And I also want to work on this as a community. I'm going to be going through this book again and doing its little 30-day challenge at the beginning and documenting it on our Discord and in my newsletter. And I think you should join me. Once a week, I think it would be really great to have check-ins on Discord to see how everyone's progressing. If you're interested in regaining control over your attention, both through some less technical means and through your home lab, that's what this community is going to be about moving forward. So that's all there is to it. Thank you so much for watching this really lengthy video, I think. I haven't edited it yet, but I'm gonna guess like it's gonna be a chunker. And I hope to catch you in the next one and in our Discord. Bye.